Tom Brady or Bill Belichick? Which of the two was the catalyst for the Dynasty of the Patriots? Find out soon on the Soapbox Heroes podcast. Welcome everybody. What's going on? I want to thank everybody for stopping in and watching our first ever podcast, the Soapbox Heroes podcast. You're here with myself, Eric, as well as Steven. Just a quick go over of who we are. Just two guys who like to argue. We've been friends for 8 years now. So we're pretty good at making sure that they're always civil arguments. But what we're going to do is I'm going to pass over to him so he can tell you a little bit about himself as well. And then we'll go over a couple more things with it being the first episode. And then we'll kick off the argument. So I'm going to pass it over to him.
Yeah, I'm Steven. Also go by Sven occasionally because of reasons. I'm actually a school teacher, but Corona 2019, had to find something to do in the meantime to keep me busy. So super opinionated, and I'm always right because that's just who I am. So if you got any questions, drop them in the chat. You can hit us up on our socials, which Eric's going to tell you about in a little bit. Just enjoy the show.
Yep, and I'll switch over to me and real quick, yeah. So I do priority account management at a restaurant supply company. So I think the best part about this is going to be a debate podcast, and with me being a natural salesman, I'm sure it will turn out pretty well for me. But I appreciate everybody who's coming in. Like he said, we'll go over the socials really quick, and I'll switch us back to the dual pane. So what we're going to do in this podcast. Like I said, it's going to be a debate podcast. We're going to have a lot of differing topics. Today, the first one, of course, being the Patriots dynasty. Who is the catalyst for that? Is it Tom Brady or is it Bill Belichick? Because that's a question that a lot of people throw around, and it's very relevant now with Tom Brady no longer being a part of the Patriots. He moved on to Tampa Bay. So it's going to be an argument that's going back and forth. We've done our research. He thinks he's done the best research that he can, and I'll give him an A for effort. But we'll see how it goes. But other than that, we'll have a lot of different topics coming up this year. It's not going to be just sports. We're going to have stuff ranging from science to mythology to more sports to games, technology, anything you could think of that people like to argue. We're going to come here and we're going to argue it for you, or we're going to argue against you with it. So real quick, like he said, we also have our social media stuff. We have a Twitter that we're going to start to get up and running. We have a YouTube channel as well that our VODs are going to go on. And Wednesdays, we're also going to do the audio podcast uploads. So you'll be able to find those on Spotify, Overcast, any more that we can come up with that we'll figure out, we'll pass along to you guys. As well as below in our About Me in the panel section below on our Twitch page, there also is a topic submission box. So if anybody has any ideas of stuff that they want to watch us debate that we can go over, we'll take those in and we'll filter those through and try to find some that we could bring to you guys for an episode of the season. So that's pretty much what we're going to be doing on the podcast. I appreciate everybody who's going to come in and might watch the VOD, might hear this in the audio version. And then also real quick, just want to give a shout out to my friend over at Fractal City, as well as Penance and Hannah Houseman for allowing me to use their amazing music for our intros and outros you'll hear during our show. If you guys haven't yet, please go check them out. You can find them on Spotify, iTunes, and all other streaming platforms. Their Instagrams are listed below in the About Me section as well if you guys want to check them out. Again, that's Fractal City, Penance, and Hannah Houseman. So real quick, we're going to go over what the topic is today. Like I had mentioned, today the topic is the catalyst between the Patriots dynasty, whether that being Tom Brady or Bill Belichick. It's an argument that a lot of people always have. What would the Patriots look like if they didn't have Tom Brady, if they wouldn't have drafted him, or if Bill Belichick hadn't have been the coach at the time? There's never a for sure answer for it. All we can look at are stats and what ifs. But that's the point of the debate, is us going back and forth and looking at it. So that's what we're gonna talk about today, and we're gonna start with me looking at these points for you guys and just letting you guys know what I found. I found a couple things that we'll start with before I kick it over to to Sven to look at some stuff to maybe try to refute some points I've got. make his own points, anything like that. So the first couple points I had for mine, starting with the timeline. So Tom Brady was drafted in 2000. 2001 is when he first assumed the starting role from Drew Bledsoe. Um, in that first year that he played or was part of the Patriots, which was the year 2000, they went 5-11 with Bill Belichick and Drew Bledsoe. When he took over in 2001, they went 11-5 and won the Super Bowl. So that's a pretty big turnaround when you look at it. You know, you've got a team that's going 11-5 after going 5-11 the year before, where Brady only had one game played with 3 pass attempts. Moving on to the next season of 2001, where he had 15 games played after Drew Bledsoe got hurt, and led them to a Super Bowl, which was Bill Belichick and Tom Brady's first. The next year, 2002, was one of 2 years that the Patriots have not made the playoffs. In the years that Tom Brady has been the starter for Bill Belichick, and then going all the way through there, 2007 they had Spygate, and then the next year, 2008, was the year that Tom Brady tore his ACL, and they did not make the playoffs as well. They ended up coming second in the AFC East due to some tiebreakers, and they actually went 11-5, but didn't make it because the Dolphins had the tiebreakers with them. So that first couple points I had, they really had a really bad season with just Bill Belichick and having Drew Bledsoe. They didn't make the playoffs in 2000, had a very mediocre record. And then as soon as he takes over after Drew Bledsoe getting hurt, they actually made it all the way to the Super Bowl and won it. That one kind of shows that Tom Brady stepped in when Bill Belichick was not able to get to the Super Bowl or the playoffs, let alone with Drew Bledsoe, and kind of took over. So with those points being made, I'm going to pass it to you, Sven, and see if you have any things that refute that or some points you want to make to kind of counter those. If not, we're going to chalk that one up as a point to me. So I'm going to pass it over to you for that one.
Well, there's no debate that Tom Brady is one of the best quarterbacks of all time. He's had the numbers. He's had the consistent success. Obviously, the Patriots would not be the team that they are today if it weren't for the fact that Tom Brady came in and did start to lead them. So nobody's arguing against that. I'm certainly not. I don't think you'll find anybody in their right mind that would argue against Tom Brady being, one of the best players of all time. But if you look at it, not just from Brady came in and then they won the Super Bowl. If you look at it from a perspective of who else was there, you're going to see without a doubt his best seasons, some new talent came in. With the exception of the first 2 Super Bowl wins, there was always somebody new that came in and brought some new life to the team. It wasn't just that he himself was a spectacular talent. It's that Bill Belichick was bringing in people who were also exceptional talents to back him up. Now, if you look just from a passer rating perspective, and I know that stat isn't the best and it's kind of biased, but it seems like as time goes on, the bias is moving more towards helping out the quarterbacks in question rather than hindering them. As you look at average passer rating from his first year, his rookie season, the average passer rating in the league was 78. Well, 78.1. Now, last season, the average passer rating was 90.4. And the year before, it was 92.9. That is that is around a 15-point jump right there. That's a huge jump in any statistic. So we're seeing a league where the quarterbacks are getting better because the rules are in place that are helping both the quarterbacks be more protected. You can't touch them after a certain amount of time. You can't touch them in certain situations. The receivers are more protected, so the passer ratings are going to go up. But if you look, the first time he broke the first time he broke a 110 passer rating, which is a phenomenal passer rating, was the year that they brought in Randy Moss. Now, he at that point had 2 Super Bowl MVPs under his belt, 3 Super Bowl rings on his on his fingers. But it wasn't until Randy Moss came in that he had a truly spectacular season. Up to that point, his passer rating, the first year that they won the Super Bowl, 86.5. Not an exemplary year, but great in the Super Bowl. Clutch when it mattered. 85.7, 85.9, 92.6, 92.3, 87.9. Then you bring Randy Moss into the equation, his number one target for that year, and it jumps up to 117. And you see that in most years where he had just a standout year. They bring some new blood in. The next time he broke 110, Aaron Hernandez, Rob Gronkowski's rookie season. He had a passer rating of 111 and actually had the highest passer rating in the league that year. But it's new blood. He is spectacular on his own, but new blood brought in by the head coach is what really drove his success. He was a standout every other time, but until he had some new spark and some new catalyst, there wasn't a whole lot going. He was above average, but just that. Was not exemplary or spectacular, just above average. So that's just what I'm seeing in terms of stats. It's always some new blood that's causing him to go up to the next level.
Yeah, and so yeah, see, those are agreeable, because when you look in there, some of the notes I had down is he did have a 60% or higher completion percentage every season he's been in the NFL. Even the season he had one game where he tore an ACL. He also had a 60% completion during that game. I mean, he was at 70%. But when you look at those are good points for him bringing it in. But at the same time, when you think of other quarterbacks in the league who have gotten exemplary talent, some of those don't always plan out, and you can't always attribute that to the fact of, the guy turned out to not be as good as they thought he was going to be, or something like that. But when you look at other players coming into the league out of college, LaMichael James is a good one, the running back from Oregon. He went to the San Francisco 49ers, and that was a very big West Coast team at the time. They thought he'd be a really good fit, and he turned out to be like a kick and punt returner his whole career, and then never really did anything from the backfield standpoint. Other real standout players in college that come into teams that have suitable offenses. Tim Tebow and Percy Harvin both came out pretty much from Florida, and Tim Tebow really, he shined some, but then didn't really. Percy Harvin was very good in bright spots, but he had some real low spots. Those players coming in, they came, Percy Harvin went to play for a couple very good quarterbacks, Brett Favre, Russell Wilson, and then, Tim Tebow going to an organization that had, very, very good quarterback play in history, with John Elway and him being there to actually assist and help. So I won't argue him having good players coming in didn't affect that some, but I think another really good stat that I had written down kind of shows, even having good skill players around you, there's always like one catalyst as well that makes a good offense, especially when you have a quarterback that's very meticulous like Tom Brady. I mean, he's not a very athletic quarterback in regards of running. I mean, it took him, 19 seasons to get to 2,000 yards or something like that, or was it 1,000 yards? I don't know. It was one of the two.
It's a while.
Yeah, when you have a meticulous quarterback, one thing that you have to look at also is where you're spending your money as an organization. With that being said, when Tom Brady actually signed after the 4 years from his rookie contract, he took a little bit of a pay cut based upon what most quarterbacks around him were getting at the time for their skill level with the accolades that he already had. His second contract was only a $7 million per year, so he signed a $28 million over a 4-year contract with the Patriots. At the time, for quarterbacks around him being like Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, quarterbacks of his caliber with some accolades similar to his, were signing more between the 32 to 40 million contracts over 4 to 5 years. So he actually took a pay cut, and I tried to go back and find it as far back as I possibly could. But over the last 6 years for the Patriots, in 2013, And then 2015 to 2019, the Patriots spent more money on their offensive starting linemen, their 5 offensive linemen, than they did for their quarterbacks, which the difference between quarterback pay was way far and different because they'd spend 14 15 million a year on quarterbacks and like 13 or 12 million of that was Tom Brady. So where you talk about as well as passer ratings going up, when passer ratings go up, the worth of a quarterback that has brains, accolades, and experience being Tom Brady, being Peyton Manning, being Russell Wilson, those kind of quarterbacks in the NFL that have these bigger contracts, and Drew Brees, of course. If you look at the constant graph of like the spending a team makes for these quarterbacks, Tom Brady actually is coming in at less than like I think it was 8 to 9 million less a year than what his accolades should give him in a contract. And one thing that he's always done throughout his contract was making that pay cut and saying, no, let's take a little off this, but you have to use this money to bring some good pieces in around me. And the number one spending they did actually, in some of the years, they had 24 million in 1 year spent on their 5 starting offensive linemen compared to 14 million over quarterbacks in their whole entire locker room. So that was a big thing for me in saying that, if he was any other quarterback that they have at the time with the passer ratings that he's starting to have and has had, most of those quarterbacks are going to look for raises, and they have been over the last few years. Jameis Winston, Cam Newton, all those quarterbacks that even have okay passer ratings compared to Tom Brady have all sought after contract extensions with more money. Dak Prescott's still looking for one. He wants more money from the Cowboys. Tom Brady, on the other hand, has come back and has said, my contract's fine where it is. Let's spend that money in other places that we can make the team better. And that's not really something you can like sit on a head coach's shoulders, because the head coach isn't telling the quarterback, well, I'm not paying you more so we can make more changes. The quarterback is negotiating, saying I do or don't want more money. So that was that. I mean, I will say the points you make about him having pieces around him are very important. Randy Moss, great addition. Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski, two wonderful tight ends that he's had. And 2 and 3 very dynamic backs each year, like he had last year, and Sony Michel and James White. Being able to come out of the backfield and do multiple facets of the game.
James White, his second favorite target last year.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things that when you look at that plays a big part into a passer rating too, because when you're throwing it to a check down that's 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage and he's pulling out 12, 15 yards out of one catch, your passer rating is going to go up, and that's pretty much like an extended handoff for the most part.
Now, I don't disagree that he comes out and he is willing to do a little bit of self-sacrifice, but I would almost argue that that's because he recognizes how much he needs these extra pieces in order to be successful. Because another big point, or I guess a low point for Tom Brady was 2013 season, where both Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez, two of his biggest, literally and figuratively, targets from the previous 3 seasons, were both out. So I'm more of I want to lean on the stats for my point. If you look, he had 3 great seasons with Aaron Hernandez and Gronk. His passer rating in their rookie season was 111. The next season, 105. The next season, 98.7. Then, all of a sudden, when Aaron Hernandez was arrested and Gronkowski was sidelined with his injury, you see him drop from a 98.7 to an 87.3. That, to me, shows that while he is a great quarterback and he does know how to use his tools, when his tools get taken away from him, he struggles until he falls into a new pattern. So that was a very low-performing season for Tom Brady. And, yeah, I'll give it to you that most quarterbacks aren't willing to go back and say, hey, you know what? I'll take this pay cut because I'm just trying to do what's best for the team. I don't disagree with that point, but I still feel like if it weren't for Bill Belichick bringing in new blood and bringing in this new talent every so often to like give Brady a shot in the arm so that he's like back up to snuff, he he is not as productive without those major players like your Randy Moss, your Wes Welker, your Aaron Hernandez, Gronkowski, and then James White. Again, he loves to throw. He loves that check down to his running backs. I've noticed that a lot while looking at uh, his favorite targets over the years. But I feel like that's something that also the head coach may not be the end all be all and the final say in who gets what pay, but if he comes up and says, "Listen, Randy Moss, you've got a Hall of Fame caliber talent here that has been languishing over in Oakland for 2 years, who hasn't done anything, who's basically given up. Let's bring him back in. Let's give him a good quarterback that will actually get him some deep balls, get him out there in space, and let him do what he wants to do. Hey, will you take a little bit of a pay cut if we can get Randy Moss? Will you take a little bit of a pay cut if we can get Wes Welker? Hey, we've got two young guys coming in that are about to change the game. We've got Aaron Hernandez, we've got Rob Gronkowski. Will you be willing to sacrifice a little bit out of your bottom line if we can get those talents? I
Yeah.
feel like that's a little bit of front office play there, and a little bit of team management from the head guy.
Yeah, and I think that when you look at it too, depending, you have those kind of players that come in now. I will say, even when he moved over to having Randy Moss and those other, those two tight ends, if you look at also the stats of his like yards per attempt each season. So passer rating goes up on a multitude of things. Those seasons where you have a high passer rating, there's sometimes quarterbacks have high pass ratings because they have 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns. They have 4 or 5 less interceptions than what the average should be for their amount of attempts.
You've got your check down throws.
Exactly. So when you have those kind of players come in, especially because a lot of those players you named outside of, I think coming out of college, Aaron Hernandez was a important pick that a lot of people wanted. Rob Gronkowski, people wanted for his size, but I don't think they realized how effective he would be at the tight end position because he's a mismatch for everybody. He's too fast for linebackers. He's too big for safeties. Then when you look at other players they pulled in, like Julian Edelman was a quarterback. Wes Welker played quarterback at one point and moved over to receiver, and they kind of took him late in the draft. James White was a very late pick. All these picks or whatever that are his favorite targets, they're very dynamic players to where a lot of teams can't use them properly. When you look at the yards per gain yards per completion for Tom Brady over his seasons, he actually always went between pretty much a 6.5 to roughly about an 8. There weren't really many seasons that he had very explosive games where he would boost his yards per attempt and yards per completion. Even those seasons when he had Randy Moss, who was a very big stretch the field player, with his vertical and being able to run down the sideline and being a mismatch for most corners for how tall he was. I think he was 6'4", something like that.
He's a big dude.
Yeah, he's big. So when you look at those kind of games, even having those targets, his yards per gain didn't really change. Now, when you think of that, he's known as one of the biggest game managers, to ever play the game. Him and Peyton Manning, those two come up to the line, and most of the time they don't really, use the play it's called. They come out with one, and normally it changes at the line. And there are no quarterbacks I've ever seen and known about, that did that better by changing things and evaluating them at the line. With that, when you have a quarterback like that, I think it takes a little bit of the pressure off of your coaches. They can give you a play, and when he's looking at things on the field, when he does his own studies and research into the defense, when he's in the video room, he comes out and can change those things to really utilize the players that he has around him. Because you saw Wes Welker go away from the Patriots and go to Denver, and he kind of thrived, but his production definitely went down, and he was with Peyton Manning. And then you have other players such as Danny Amendola. He got traded and went to the Dolphins, which I know is not a very good comparison when you're saying, well, someone went from the Dolphins and look, his production went down. But when you have players like that, when you bring in people around him, sometimes even the players aren't even going to be high caliber players. They just get made better by either the offense or the way that the offense runs. And when you go through and look, the play style of offense has changed consistently pretty much up until they really knew how Tom Brady wanted to play, being shorter passes, passes over the middle, or checkdowns to running backs, whether they be screens or just dump offs. So when you look at that kind of situation, you've got a lot of different change in the offense, and I think that was more catered to Tom Brady because Bill Belichick, of course, did not make the playoffs any as a coach up until that first year that Tom Brady took over. They made the Super Bowl. Pretty much in his time in the regular season as a coach, without Tom Brady, he's only 19-17. And overall as a head coach, he's 237 and 83. So that's a pretty big gap, between your production as a coach compared to when he came in and had Tom Brady to change his to turn his record around. Now, I will say I'll make part of the argument on your behalf in saying not often do teams get prolific, players that come in and are once in a lifetime players like Tom Brady. But that also plays into it that maybe Bill Belichick was just luck of the draw. It could have been anyone. Like, Bill Parcells could have stayed around a little bit longer and got Tom Brady, and then he might still be the coach of the Patriots and not have had to get fired and all kinds of stuff like that. So, me looking at records and stuff, I think that's kind of a big deal too.
Yeah, you've definitely got a good point with the records, but you also bring up something interesting when you say just you need that one piece, that one standout player to fall into place, and then you've got everything you need. You've got the talent, you've got everything that just kind of lines up in this miraculous, spectacular way. I want to bring you to a guy that's not that guy. You may have heard of him. His name is Matt Castle. Matt Castle, we talk about, or you mentioned briefly, the 2008 season. Tom Brady gets hurt. So he's out the entire series or the entire season, and Matt Castle has to step up and be the guy. Do you know what Matt Castle's passer rating was in that season? You have any clue?
I'm pretty sure it was similar to close to what Tom Brady's normally is.
It was an 89.4, which is his second highest of all time. The only time he's had a higher one was I can't remember which season it was, but
I've got it written down if you'd like me to tell you what season that was.
Yeah, tell me what season that was.
So when Matt Castle actually took over as starting quarterback, yes, he had a passer rating similar to Tom Brady's. Now, if you
higher
look
than
at
league average,
higher than average. Now, if you look at it, the pieces he had around him in that season were the pieces that you said, that they got to build around Tom Brady to help him, being Aaron Hernandez, Ron Gronkowski, those kind of players. The following season, he got traded to Kansas City, and his passer rating did go down, which is to be expected when you go to a new offense. But the next highest that he had in his, his highest he ever had in his career was the following season at Kansas City when he was in the 90s, I believe. I think it
was like a 98 something.
Yeah, his rating was higher with the Chiefs than it was with the Patriots, coming in. So that was a part of my argument too, is saying, you have Matt Castle. But then when you look at Matt Castle going to a new offense, it only took him like one down year to come up and have a better passer rating in a new offense.
I stand by if Matt Castle could have an 89.4 passer rating with the same lineup that Tom Brady was getting 2 seasons before, or the season before a 117, the season after 96.2. If Matt Castle can put those kind of numbers up, I'm going to say that most quarterbacks, unless you've got somebody that's just incapable of reading your offense or reading a defense, I feel like anybody could have been slotted into that. An NFL talent level is obviously above that of like some high school joker who goes out and like, oh, I can play this. But I feel like if Matt Castle can put up those numbers, any NFL level talent could have put up those numbers with the other pieces in place put there by Bill Belichick.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, at me being that, I'll even be that guy. I played a little bit of quarterback in high school. And when I watched Jay Cutler have 10 yards and a half against the Titans with the Dolphins, I was like, if you'd like to pay me a lot less than $10 million a season to come out and do that, I will happily do that for a lot less. I
I'll throw 10
promise.
picks a game.
Yeah,
Whatever.
literally, yeah. I will throw it for 10 yards over a half, but I digress from that. Yeah, so I mean, Matt Castle had that good season. That he came in, they went 11-5, and to be fair, they still even missed the playoffs that season.
Yeah.
They lost the tiebreaker for the wild card with the Ravens, and the Dolphins went 11-5, but had beat the Patriots. So they actually went to the playoffs. Now, that being said, 2007, you have Spygate. Spygate happened the same season. Yes, happened the same season that they went to the Super Bowl. And
First time they lost.
Yeah, in 16-0, and actually lost to the Giants. Which in reality, that was just some miraculous play by the Giants that actually, had got them through it. Now, looking back to that, when he got hurt the next season, they did not make the playoffs, and still had gone 11-5. Now you can argue both sides of saying, well, they didn't make it because they had to adjust from Spygate, or you look at it and say, well, they got caught with Spygate, so they still had that information, and it takes some time for it to no longer be viable. Now, one other stat, and this is kind of a counter argument to mine, but I'll make this as well. In 2016, Brady served his 4-game suspension for Deflategate. Now, they went 3-1 that season without Tom Brady. But the beginning of their season was a little bit more lax, you can say. They played a couple teams that were down. I think they played the Dolphins. They had played the Texans. And that was before, the Texans had really found their footing with Deshaun Watson, and had a little bit more of an improved defense. But yeah, so I mean, that's kind of a counter argument to my point of saying, another quarterback did come in, and went 3-1 in those 4 games without Tom Brady. But when you still look at it, outside of that, I mean, that still brought back the record. So without that 3-1, I mean, they were, Bill Belichick is sitting at 16-16 without Tom Brady if he didn't have to serve that 4-game suspension. Now, of course, that's that record, that 19-17 is regular season. That's not playoffs, but you can't really add to the total because he never really even made the playoffs without Tom Brady. So, but yeah, I mean, that's what I had for that one. I mean, to recap, when you see Tom Brady take over in 2001, you have an instant jump of switching, of doing a +6 to their win-loss ratio, an instant flip from 5-11 to 11-5. The only times that they did not make the playoffs so far when Tom Brady has played consistently throughout the season, they didn't make it in 2002, which is he did start, but I think that they had a positive record, but they had lost another wild card, or they didn't make the wild card in 2008 when he actually got hurt. So all those other seasons he's made it. When you look back, Bill Belichick hadn't made it, without Tom Brady. And then also the seasons that he, had someone else who even had as good as passer rating as Tom Brady, he still didn't make the playoffs. And then Matt Castle, of course, went on to do okay in Kansas City, pretty well in Kansas City, and then he kind of fell off the train in making nine appearances in 2 seasons for the Lions, and so a lot of in between, and that was really a weird thing that happened with him. But I mean, they've not missed the playoffs since 2009, and Tom Brady has not been out since the end of 2008. So that's pretty much a square up for mine. We had some good points. The best part about arguing is the fact of I'm not probably ever going to change your opinion, and you're probably not going to change mine. That's fine.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So that wraps up for mine. If you want to do a quick overview of yours, we'll make some final points, and then that'll be.
I've only got one more thing that I'd like to bring up.
Okay.
How many league MVPs does Tom Brady have?
Actually, that I did not look that stat up.
He has 2.
Okay.
He has 2 league MVPs. So the first one was 2007 Spygate, when Randy Moss was brought in, and then the most recent one, there were 10 years between them. Wow, didn't realize that. Was in 2017 when Nothing new, nothing spectacular, nothing really earth shattering happened,
They
but
won the Super Bowl that year, didn't they? Was that when
they
they
did
beat the
not.
Falcons?
That's when they got beat by the Eagles.
Oh, that's correct. Yeah, they well, okay, okay.
So that's actually my point. Even though you have Tom Brady, who arguably one of the best players of all time, I can't state that enough. Uh, you have Tom Brady, and every time he has won the league MVP, he's turned around and lost the Super Bowl, which which to me shows that even a singularly spectacular talent doesn't lead to team success. So, just to wrap up my points, uh, Tom Brady, great quarterback, uh, but if it weren't for Bill Belichick putting all the other pieces together and working his magic behind the scenes, Tom Brady does not have his MVP season with Randy Moss, with his all time high passer rating of a 117, leading the league, and his third highest passing yards per game of 300 yards per game. He doesn't have uh, his other spectacular seasons, another league leading one in 2010, where Bill Belichick actually won Coach of the Year. He had a 111 passer rating, once again leading the league. Uh, and then you don't have like the Wes Welker, you don't have the Aaron Hernandezes, you don't have the Gronkowskis, you don't have James White, you don't have Julian Edelman, you don't have all of these other major key pieces that have contributed so much to his success, so that he can lead the league in all these different ways. Now, was I don't have the numbers or the stats for this. I know he's only won 2 league MVPs. I know Peyton had more. There's been several that have had more. There have been quarterbacks that have had more yardage. That aside, he's still a fantastic quarterback. But I'm eager to see. And yeah, he's how old is he this year?
He'll be
He's in his
43.
40s.
He's 43, I believe. He's trying to make it to 45, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So if he's going into this season at Tampa Bay, he has seen a steady decline in his passer rating over the past 4 years: 112, 102, 97.7, 88. I'm eager to see what he does in Tampa Bay, because I don't think he can replicate any of the success, even if Tampa Bay is able to pull all kinds of strings and get all sorts of stellar talent from across the league, or just build it up in their own ranks. I don't think he has the success at Tampa Bay that he did in New England.
Now, to be fair, one thing I will say is this team that he's coming into with Tampa Bay. You've already have a very, very good receiving core. I think honestly, this might be one of the better receiving cores he's had since he's been in the league. He had Randy Moss, and he had Wes Welker, but a lot of the good receivers he had has not been at the same time. But when you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, like their number one and number two receivers are Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Those are very, very good receivers. They had very, very good production in Tampa Bay with a quarterback that, Jameis Winston is a good quarterback, but he's not at the same level as Tom Brady. I mean, he admitted
He's
that.
not a prototypical quarterback.
Right. And I mean, he even admitted that whenever they asked him about that on TV, what it's like to be replaced by Tom Brady out of an organization that you want to be at. That's the only place that he's been at since he was drafted. I mean, he even said, I'm a quarterback that wants to come out here and compete, but when you get replaced by the GOAT, it's kind of hard to argue that. Like, someone's not going to look at Tom Brady and go, no, I'd rather have, Jameis Winston. For someone who went 20 and 20 touchdowns, 20 picks last season. And when you look at Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, they had phenomenal production for having a quarterback like that. That's a very gunslinging quarterback.
You're looking at league number 10 and league 33 in terms of wide receivers with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, respectively.
Yeah, and that's the thing is when you look at that, you have to think, what could those guys do and what can they do when you have a quarterback like Tom Brady, or, if they had a quarterback like Russell Wilson or Drew Brees. You have quarterbacks that are very good decision makers and very good offensive output quarterbacks to know what they need to do and when they need to do it. So I'm pretty excited to see what he can do with those, especially, and with a pretty good running game. The Buccaneers have a very good receiving backfield. So I think it's a really good fit for him. I'm excited to see what happens. And just one other fun fact before we say our goodbyes. They actually released last week the numbers that are projected for wins for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Patriots. They have the Buccaneers at being estimated at 9 wins this season coming up, and the Patriots are 8.5. So the Patriots got dropped a very hefty amount of wins coming off of a season like they had just had. But their quarterback, I think right now, looking at the starting quarterback, unless they draft one or get another, is Brian Hoyer. And if you remember, he played at New England, so he's familiar with the coaching staff. But it's kind of a tough replacement to come in and replace Tom Brady, especially in a venue such as Foxborough, where they're only used to winning. They're not used to having to go through down seasons. Like I said, you have to think all these fans and this organization has not been lacking of, trophies or AFC championships and stuff like that with Tom Brady, considering they've only missed the playoffs, twice since he's been playing. So very hard to look at it like that, especially for people replacing him and everything. But I think that that's a good wrap for that one. We made some points. We went back and forth. I made some counter arguments to myself with some stuff I brought up after things that you said.
I couldn't find any counter arguments to me. So I guess go ahead, chalk that one up for me.
Yeah, we might have to chalk that one up for you. I refuse to believe that it's because of Bill Belichick. We will find that out this coming season when he has to take a quarterback who's not been a very winning quarterback and turn him into a very winning quarterback in that setting. So especially with the Bills being good, the Jets are probably going to be a little bit better than they were last season. With Sam Darnold being back and everything. So we'll see how they do. Only time will tell. If you'd like, you can say your outs, and then we will be good.
Well, again, thanks to everybody who has tuned in, joined in. We will be here again next Sunday, I believe. We have to hammer out which topic we're going to talk about. Have we finalized that? Are we sure? Are we set on a topic yet?
I don't know if we're completely set on it. It's not going to be sports. If it is, I think that the last thing that we had mentioned might have been a little bit of a Bigfoot related one, but
we'll a Bigfoot may be coming up next. So
and that one might have to be a 2-parter.
So just. Thanks for listening. Thanks for checking us out. Again, I'm Sven. I'm very opinionated, and I win.
Yeah, he wins this one. We'll give it to him. But that's going to do it for us today, everybody. I want to thank everybody who stopped in. Didn't have anybody chatting so far, but I appreciate the follows from Fractal City. Everybody else who might stop in and watch us at some point or listen to the audio. I appreciate everybody who stopped in, and like he said, we'll be here Sunday. We'll figure out the topic, maybe put it on our Twitter. Make sure you guys go through and follow to stay up to date with it. That's at the SBH Podcast. We also have some YouTube and stuff. We'll put the VODs up, but I appreciate everybody stopping in. That'll do it for us. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
Enjoy.